We are bringing the shares up very quickly to say this. I want to show the interrelationship between all these people in Planetiers. Let me start by saying that in 2017 I was invited by Gunter to visit him at a place in the French Cornwall, la Cornouaille française, alors in Bretagne, French Brittany. He was developing an approach to revamp the entire economy of that region. So presenting a big concept with specific projects to revamp a territory. One of the areas that you sometimes do, like the last one, is Morocco, so nearby. We did not start yet. We need to start something like this. Second point, please sit down if you want. Second point is, we started there with Gunter. Then, Natan, you were sent to me, or you were presented to me by Gunter. After that, you were doing a summer job while studying at Católica. On his master's, he went to, in Lisbon in this case, he went to La Cornouaille française for helping Gunter with trying to put the project of the region into specific things into the ground. Then we are hit by COVID, and we are starting the first edition of Planetiers. And what happens? We don't stop. We try to build Planetiers. We failed the first attempt in April, 25th of April, which is quite a date in Portugal, the revolution, and we need to move into October. By then, Natan is preparing everything to start with his business, right? And we keep following his moves, his contacts, the dialogues with Delta, etc. We arrived to October. Finally, we are able to run Planetiers, and I must say that is important to be said. Gunter was one of the few that dared, against all odds, to be present at Planetiers World Gathering first edition. A lot of international speakers there, but mostly online, okay? Gunter was running the show there. And we invited Católica, including Manuela and Amyris. You saw here the Alchemy Project, John Mello, the CEO of Amyris. This big partnership, transatlantic partnership between Porto and San Francisco. And then they spoke there. And then we started testing some ideas. And even in Gunter, all those supports are very critical. I remember we asked you for support with a very important company that is a biorefinery group. It's a top innovative company. Sorry, the name. Novamont. And he brought in on the farm to fork strategy for a project, for a pilot. We were working together with Católica, testing how to put Planetiers to support Católica, and then you bring in the Novamont pilot to be applied. And then what happens? Católica sees progressively, or I think it saw very quickly in the beginning, that we could join forces and bring in, people like Gunter, other change agents that several of them we have been, listening to on the last days. And what happens? We start working together more frequently, and the biotechnology very smartly goes and gets the right guy from the business school and from the leadership of Católica Porto to join this coalition. And then we have what is called Insura. Planetiers co-creates with Católica Porto, Biotech and Business School, the Insura. And you see, and then we start building the Insure app last year, 1 year ago. And Gunter joins to be keynote speaker, to speak to top executives, to be with researchers of Católica, challenging them with their biotech startups. And then we move forward. We have now 40 organizations that joined. Some are businesses, some are municipalities, some are business clusters. So it's a multiplicative effect. And so we are now all here together, and we see this opportunity that Gunter says we need this science, because the work of Manuela at the Biotech Católica is quite unique in Portugal. And we have Gunter with ideas, Natan with work on the ground. So we need to create these coalitions. But let's go back. Sorry, let's go back to some comments. So, what do you think about Natan? What do you think about these ideas with the mushrooms that you heard?
What I think? I think it's great. I think we should try to get to the next scale, exactly like Gunter was saying. I think we still have a problem with scale, because all of those initiatives are very small scale, and we're only going to solve at least part of the problem when we're going to be able to find solutions that can be applied at scale. And I think one of them is the mushroom, definitely. And so I'm super happy to hear that Gunter can do that, and plus in Africa, which is where I think the problem is even worse. So congrats to Gunter.
No, I mean, and let's add that the other person who was on the original team with Natan is François Nollet, and he went off to Argentina, and he kind of dropped the business of the mushrooms. But he decided, as he was scanning through all the opportunities of the blue economy, he decided to focus on the larvae of flies, the fly larvae. So he succeeded in making a huge agreement with the largest potato processing company in the world called McCain. And they have a processing plant in Argentina. I invited Natan to come and work with me on a stone paper project in Argentina. And then he learned about my plan for Argentina, which included the larvae of flies. And he said, but I would like to do that. And I put him in touch, and he was trained for 3 months with one of our chief scientists from the National University of Colombia, Dr. Hilderman Pedraza. And Dr. Hilderman introduced him. And what I loved about this enthusiasm of François is that he thought after 3 months he was the expert. And of course, we have this famous saying, in the land of the blind, one eye is king. And so he said, you know, no one here in Argentina, as you were saying, there's so much meat around, there's so much food waste around, and no one seems to realize they can convert it into protein through flies in a very hygienic way. So the result is that he raised more than 2 million euros in capital, and he made an agreement with a potato company because the slaughterhouses were not ready yet. But he said, I'm not going to wait for the slaughterhouses. I advised him, don't wait for the slaughterhouses. So he's now feeding his larvae, he's feeding them potato peels. And the flies just eat, the larvae of the flies eat. And the huge market that there is now emerging as a substitute for sardines as feed for salmon, for example. I mean, it's a huge market, and the larvae. So in the middle of the COVID, when everything was locked down, he nevertheless succeeded in getting private investors to mobilize 2 million, get the largest potato company to sign up. The factory is in full construction, first plant. And I think this is the kind of transition that we need. There are people who are one eye king in the land of the blind. And this is what really entrepreneurship is all about. Entrepreneurship is seeing an opportunity, having sufficient knowledge to get started, don't have yet all the scientific knowledge under your skin, but you get started. And this is what Planetiers has to do. Planetiers has to give the platform. I see the end row there, all the young people there. I mean, it's you we have to reach. You guys have to listen to these opportunities and say, how can I become one eye in the land of the blind? Because the big organizations will never be the ones who will see with two eyes. They're myopic. They look at it, but they don't see it. And that is why we have this important breakthrough. And that's why Planetiers, you know, I came here particularly because you decided to go ahead with your event, even if it was COVID. And I don't remember everything I had to do to get here, but I got here. And I got out again. And you remember, I flew from here straight to Japan. I was able to go straight back to Japan, and I even had to spend time at the consulate to get a new visa and new permits and all of that. But this kind of hurdles are normal and natural. It is when we separate the boys from the man, as we used to say when they went to the military service. We need to separate the people who are interested from the people who are doing. And Nathan, you're one of those who are doing. And it's interesting, for me it is very enlightening that Francois, with whom you were, probably the best result of the work in Bretagne was that you both took off and were very clear on how to get things done. Because in Brittany, we couldn't really take off, because the Chamber of Commerce that was in charge was being merged with another Chamber of Commerce, and they had kind of lost the horizon in administrative procedures. And the beauty is that when you're an entrepreneur, you're not the wave. You're the surfer on the waves. So when you're in a region where there's no waves, go out. I mean, no surfer will remain on a beach where there's no wave. The surfer will take his board and go to somewhere where there is a wave. And so you found the wave back home in Portugal, and Francois found his wave in Argentina. And this is how we're seeding transition around the world. So thanks to Planetiers and thanks to pushing this forward, and make certain that over the next years we have dozens more of these examples. But that depends on the back row.
But Gunter, don't do as this thing of having one eye. You can be king. Don't do as once a genius told me that you don't have to have one eye. You can only say that you have because the others don't see. But don't do that, because then you have nothing really. But so it's very interesting to say also that I was going to say something about the kids. What was it? I lost my idea.
Too much wine last night, it must have been.
But the kids, no, I was thinking about, I was going to say something about kids, because we have been having kids all these days here. You can see all recordings of this conference later. And so whatever you didn't see, you should see, because it was a very key point for me, was to film, to record, to stream, and to be able to disseminate this knowledge, even at a more compressed way, so more summaries and all that. It's very, very important, because we want to use all these in action, okay? And one of the things is to engage the new generations. You were saying new generations. We have been spending, and you know that, we have been surrounded these days by kids, and we need really to speak to the heart of people and to do the change.
Okay.
And
thank you.
And Manuela, let's go to do business with this gentleman, and let's continue our big marathon because we have there is a lot of work to do. Your work is really, really amazing. You are responsible for this amazing partnership, really responsible for this amazing partnership of Católica with Planetiers. And let's get down, continue, and get down to business.
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah. I have one for Natan.
There's one. There's one.
I have one.
Hello,
for
this is working? Yes. Well, thank you very much for your presentations, and it's very inspiring to see the work that one can do when you gather different systems, different industries, different solutions. And we need more people like you guys, like Gunter, like you, where you can see, where the apps are, where can you connect the dots between the big corporates and whatnot. So not only you have to have the vision, but you also need the capability, the influence to influence these companies. And I think that's hard. You, Gunter, you can do it. You have your reputation already there, but how can others push for it if they don't have that visibility yet? So you can see the ideas, but how can you push? How can you push a Nestle, or how can you push a Delta if you don't have a big backing of your background behind it?
I'm going to be very honest. I don't know. I don't have the experience. I know that one thing works all the time, though, is when you speak with your heart, simply. When you try to convince with your heart. And yeah, that's it. That's how at least I did it. I was really convinced that we needed to change the way we were doing business, and I tried to explain that and put that then in a way that then speaks to those people, because sometimes, like you said, there is a gap between we entrepreneurs with little experience and the way we see how change needs to happen, and then how a big company sees how change needs to happen. And if you can combine those two languages, then you can convince them. But that's definitely a tricky one. So the best is to speak with your heart.
Before you say something, let me say something very quickly. What we have been finding with Católica, for instance, is that the power of networks. So you alone, I can have fantastic ideas, but if I bring in Manuela, if I bring in the business school, if I bring in the School of Education and Psychology, as we are doing right now, then the businesses come around and integrate these, because there's this reputation, there is this interest with Planetiers, the reputation of Católica. We start building these networks, and it is much, much easier. So don't try, first speak with heart. Second, don't forget to connect, because I'm sure Natan referred to the network of Gunter and the projects that work around the world, right? It was not, I can prove it to you.
I would like you to tell the story of Mr. Honda. I had the privilege, Honda, the cars and the motorbikes. So I had the privilege in 1981 to spend 3 months in his office. And of course, I didn't have much time with him. He had too many busy things on his agenda. But once I was able to ask him, Mr. Honda, you decided in 1956 to start building cars, and your first cars were built in 58, 2 years' time only. How did you decide to go from motorbikes to cars? Did you make a SWOT analysis? Strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And he looked at me and he laughed at me. I mean, he was 1.60 meters and they're 1.92 meters, and he looked at me and said, if I would have made a SWOT analysis, I would never have built a car. I said, why? I just had my MBA. I just learned you have to do a SWOT analysis. And he said, no. If I make analysis about my weakness, very big weakness, no strengths. If I look at the strengths of my competitors, in those days, Mitsubishi, the big companies, that strength so overwhelming. So I said, but Mr. Honda, what did you do? He said, Very simple, Pauli-san, very simple. I made a list of the weaknesses of my big competitor. And the list was very long and made me feel good. Now, this comes back to where we are. Speak from your heart. Mr. Honda said, if I feel good about going after these guys, then I'm going to make it, because somehow the creative mind of an entrepreneur with a passion and a commitment is just going to make it work. And it is not that you have the grand strategy for 5 years. Actually, it's a miracle that someone could transform from an idea to a factory in 2 years' time. Today, the planning of a car factory takes a decade. And I believe this is a very important point in the equation. How do we convince the big ones? By doing it. Because we're not asking their help, nor their support. We're doing it. And guess what? The biggest effect that we have is a very simple one. It's called the surprise effect. Oh, this works. Oh my God, Nathan is doing this already with my competitor. Now it's on the radar. And I know that I was on the radar for many years with Nestlé. And so when the problem emerged with the Zimbabwean government, actually they were ready to accept my solution without any debate. There was no negotiation needed. It was like, of course, we have to do this with you. And I think this is important. How do you convince? Not by talking to them, by doing. And when they see what you're doing, even if it's small, I mean, the 200 kilograms is in Nestlé's world nothing. But my God, they are wondering, how did you get the permit? How do you do the logistics? I mean, they're all asking these questions because in their mind, this is not possible. And as you go to the market as an entrepreneur and you prove that it's not 1 kilo a month, but it is actually hundreds of kilos and you're going to tons, then somehow you get on the radar screen. And once you're on the radar screen and you continue performing, you will convince them, thanks to your performance.
To raise a final question to Manuela, because you have an experience that is very diverse. So you work with Portuguese companies. I imagine that it's much more difficult to do, the amazing work you do in, taking waste out and to create, to valorize products. In a context like Portugal, may be quite difficult. You have the experience of supplying California with, amazing new cosmetics. What is the difference? How difficult it is to work with Portugal, within Portugal?
Well, I think at the moment, at least the agro-food industry, that is the main sector I'm working with. I think companies are really open to innovation. It's really important, and the problem here is sometimes the funding capacity of these companies. And we have a good research and innovation funding, so we get very well in the prototype, and then we have another problem that is moving from the prototype to the final product. And that is the gap we have, because they don't have funding, and they need to be very careful and select the products that go faster to the market and do money. So sometimes these products in circular economy take time, needs extra money and extra networking sometimes. And that's why, for me, is the most difficult part. In the case of Amyris, as we are doing, I think this networking, this funding capacity helps a lot to move faster to the market. And this is probably not the motivation. I think it's the same, because in Portugal, companies are really prone to create new circular products. Even the legislation, everything is forcing them, but they are now seeing as a regeneration opportunity to have new products. I think, at least from our results, what we see is that it's very difficult sometimes this funding or this investment to move from the prototype to the market, especially because in food area, the margins, the income margins are really small, and this makes that is, in order we put a new product in the market, sometimes takes 3 years. When they finish the 3 years, we don't have any more the novelty, and we don't have enough money. So that's, I think I would say that probably in Portugal we need some more support to stimulate the companies, and eventually to bring also investors that with some big companies we can make more and faster, as I would say in this case Amyris is doing at the moment.
How do you see this, Gunter? Because so she lacks a bit amazing science, amazing ability to generate new things. You have seen that around the world, people like Manuela, right? Top people like Manuela. But then there is like the entrepreneur part, right?
Yeah.
Like how to take it to the market. And many times we see like a barrier, right?
Well, again, let's be very practical. If a company today is asked to make an investment in a new project, it will not pass the investment committee.
Yeah.
It will not. Because all the signals are there that it's going to be a recession, it's going to be inflation, it's going to be and there's supply chain problems. So don't even go there. I mean, my suggestion is really don't even go there, because you will waste your time. And the worst thing that we do as young entrepreneurs at age and heart is, we don't want to waste our time. And you tell them you don't waste your time. The key for me is that we have to create something which I call in the marketing the captive market. My first investor in any of my new projects is also my first client. That works extremely well, because you eliminate the risk factor. Why are bigger companies not undertaking larger investments? Because of the risk factor. Everything comes down on the risk factor. Now, how do I eliminate the risk factor? Because those who invest are the customer. That works extremely well. And this is the logic that we have applied in several industries. Let me give you a very simple example of one of the industries where today we're already at 1 million tons and we're moving to 25 million tons. I'll give you the short history of stone paper, which is again one of the projects that François was working on for a while. Mining companies have a big problem, that is dust. Dust is what causes the public around the mine to reject the mine, because not only the trees but also the inside of our lungs get all accumulating this dust, and it's causing health problems. So for a mine to have aspirators, to have these machines to suck all the dust away, costs so much energy that they don't do it. So we made the first agreement for making a stone paper factory using the dust to make paper. I will not go into details of the technology now, but it's making paper without any use of water and without cutting a tree. You're really using the dust as your main material to make a paper. The first company in China that agreed to it was also a cement producer. And we decided that the first factory was going to deliver the bags for the cement. So how is this for a marketing tool for a company that is accused of creating too much dust, is under pressure from the public and from the regulator, and then they figure out that actually the biggest use of paper they have in-house is making bags for cement. Now they could have a cement bag that when they use the cement, they could put the bag into the cement as well. They had no more waste management. They were the biggest customer. Now, if you're a cement factory, you're using millions and millions of bags. So all of a sudden, the mining company realized that their paper issue was being resolved, their waste issue on mining sites with bags was resolved because you could mix the bag into the cement itself, and everything got solved from an investment point of view. The investor became the consumer. Now, once you have some kind of a partnership like that, then volumes arrive and you go on your experience curve, and now you can repeat it. So the same factory was done 4 times over in China, and now we're going to do it 86 times. 86 times it was decided. China has no more water. And so now the policy kicks in. And this is very important, to always listen to what is the priority for the politicians. Now in China, if you do any project whereby you're saving water, you're a top priority, because they have no water. So all of a sudden you have the combination of the public perception of dirty air and the government's policy of cutting down water consumption, and the two combined gives you a chance to really ride a wave. Now let me just admit one thing. When I was presented in the year 96 for the first time a sheet of paper made from rock dust, I was excited. But I have to admit, it took 17 years to get the machineries in place. 17 years. And this is part of the risk for many of the companies, because it takes a long time to fine-tune real innovations into supply chain systems. And that is why we need, as I have been applying it myself, this technique of my first customer is my first investor, because then we're all ready to hang in. And if there is a bonus side from the government saying that if you're going to make paper work without water, then we're going to make that a new standard. So by 2035, 25% of all paper used in China will be stone paper. It's going to be the biggest cleanup act of mining industry in history. It is going to be the largest saving of water in China's history. We're saving the equivalent of 6 Three Gorge dams. I don't know if you know the Three Gorge dams. That's the biggest dam in China. 6 times we're saving it by substituting. So when you look at the scale you can go, those who were our first-time investors, and I discussed that last night, those were our first-time investors, they had to commit to me that they had to stick with this project for 25 years. Now, usually investors don't stick with initiatives 25 years, unless they are legacy investors, or unless they're governments with a clear long-term strategy, which I don't see in Europe all too often. But they are around, and we can do it. So to me, this is a very important point. Create an investor relationship that is a customer relationship, and lock it in long-term. And when you have locked it in, you can do a transition in the industry and in society. Thank you.
Thank you.